So it wasn't the lack of direction, it wasn't poor writing, it wasn't abysmal decision making that has destroyed the DC extended universe. It all comes down to a tin of tomatoes. This is my review for The Flash. So welcome back to the channel, everyone, and welcome to my review for The Flash movie. Finally, this film, which has been in gestation hell for God knows how long, I do know how long, I'll come on to that, is finally with us, and I've gone and watched the film, and I'm here to give you my thoughts on it. Now, I'm going to split this review into a couple of parts. I'm going to do non-spoiler, then I'm going to put up a warning, and I'm going to spoil the hell out of this beast for you. So, if you haven't seen the film, you jump off at that point and maybe come back once you've seen it. If you have seen it, carry on watching. If you don't care about spoilers, carry on watching. But before you do, hit the subscribe button, like, share the video, all that manner of stuff, and let's get down to it. So here we are with The Flash. Yes, this film with a runtime of 2 hours and 24 minutes and directed by Andy Muschietti. Written by Christina Hodson. Sees the return of Ezra Miller as the Flash and as the Flash. Coming to that, Michael Keaton, as you know, returns as Batman. We have Sasha Calle as Supergirl, Michael Shannon in a returning role as Zod, and Ron Livingston pops up as Barry's father. Now this film here, this film, obviously we start off, we're set in the standard DCEU, and we're introduced to an action scene between the Flash, or with the Flash, and with Ben Affleck's Batman, who graces the screen in this film. And this big action sequence, and it leads Barry to start questioning what if he could go back and change the past, and thusly he does, and this creates a turn of events whereby obviously he stops his mother from dying. He's introduced to a younger version of himself, who he in turn introduces to becoming the Flash. So you have two Flashes running around, and we're back in time. Superman has never come to Earth. Kara Zor-El has arrived on Earth. Zod comes at that point in the Man of Steel, and it's up to the two Flashes with the help of Batman, this time Michael Keaton, to stop this from happening, rescue Supergirl and save the day, essentially. So that's it. That's all I'm going to say about the script for this movie until that spoiler bit. That's the basic rundown of the film. It's a decent film. It's a decent film. It's got its problems. The effects are not too good, I don't think. It's very cartoony, very rubbery in places. But, you know, the film's got enough heart. It's got enough nostalgia, enough callbacks for anyone who loves this arena of filmmaking, this genre, should be pleased. Yeah, it was a fun movie. A fun time was had. But it just feels like we're stepping back on special effects. Like you know, we've hit a peak, and now we're accepting poorer quality special effects. And I'll talk about that as well, because it's it's bad. But a decent film, decent flick, a fun time. I wasn't bored. It's humorous in parts. It's action packed. It's bright. It's colourful. Soundtrack wise, obviously you've got Batman's score in there, of course you have Michael Keaton's there, but you get a lot of films now are using like rock tracks and things, or music song tracks over the action. I'm not enjoying that so much, but this film is definitely worth a watch. And I know we've got Aquaman to come, but this is a nice farewell to the sort of Snyderverse era of DC. So now that's out of the way, let's spoil the hell out of this one. Let's get into it. Okay, so like I said, we start off with this action sequence which for me felt more akin to Wonder Woman 1984. I felt I was back in that territory of filmmaking, of that sort of, you know, that ilk. So that necessarily, I was a bit dubious about what I was watching. You've got Ben Affleck returning as Batman. Fantastic. Although he looks somewhat gaunter. He's lost a lot of weight since he's done Batman before. He ain't put on the muscle for this one so much. And a lot of it is CGI work. However, the Batsuit that he's wearing, not a fan of the sort of the armory look, but I like the colour palette of the Batsuit. You've got the grey and the blue, and I thought that was wonderful. And I thought it looked fantastic on screen. And we haven't really seen this before, right? And this shows us that we can have a Batman that is somewhat lighter in colour, in tone, in palette than what we're being given with that sort of a thing up there. That Batman can take a step back into the light, so I like that element of it. Obviously, like I said, Barry starts questioning whether he can, and he starts talking to Batman about it, and Batman advises him against it, but Barry had already taken a trip back in time. He realises that he can time travel, although he's only gone back a day to the events of this. He then decides he'll go back and he will stop his mother from dying. And like I said, it all comes down to a can of tomatoes. His father went to pick up a can of tomatoes because they were short, but he sends Barry. Barry goes, and yeah, it all goes to hell like that. He comes back and finds, Barry's dad comes back from getting the tomatoes, finds his wife. Obviously, she's been injured, hurt, dying. She dies. He gets the blame for it. But there is this footage that could possibly exonerate him from all blame. But Barry realises, I don't have to do anything. I don't really have to affect anything, cause any change with people. I don't have to interact with people. All I have to do is go back to that day when my mum is shopping and put an extra tin of chopped tomatoes or tomatoes into her basket, and all solved. I've done it without affecting anyone. It just changes, the ripples change, no one's sent out later on. The mother, and it works, and Barry sees this, he finds out this has happened, and this is on the eve of, he's back in time, and on the eve of when he gets his powers, and he meets another version of himself who he then gives powers to. And that's when you have the attack of Zod and all this sort of a thing happening. They go and get help from Batman, being Michael Keaton, who, when you see him, he's very old, long hair, beard. And at first I thought, what's this? What's going on? He looks like Dennis Quaid. He looked like Dennis Quaid in Enemy Mine when he's got all the hair and the beard. When he's on the ground, you take a look. That's Dennis Quaid right there. But it's not. It's Michael Keaton. So they go off, they do what they got to do, and yeah, the story elements I will leave out for the most part, but if you've seen the film, you know exactly what happens. You know that what happens with Supergirl is a fixed point in time, essentially. There's no saving it. You know that the second Barry, the new Barry, ultimately gets consumed by trying to change things and ultimately turns bad himself, so to speak. And you know what happens to Batman. Batman sacrifices himself essentially and dies. There's nothing they can do. These two characters are destined to die here at this point. Yeah, and in the end, obviously, we get the Worlds Collide stuff. The Worlds Collide stuff was interesting because Worlds Collide is a DC comic book. It was a storyline that was done in the 80s when they wanted to clear all the messes up and make one fixed universe. And thusly we see a load of cameos. Now, getting into the cameo part of this film, there's a wealth of them. There's a wealth of cameos all the way through. Yes, we do get to see Adam West. We get to see Christopher Reeve, Helen Slater. We get to see Nicolas Cage fighting a giant spider. That finally happened, came to screen, if you know the backstory of that. Fantastic stuff. I mean, there's other, you know, Wonder Woman's in it. There's an end credits scene with Aquaman in it, although it's pointless standing around for that. It's a worthless scene. But yeah, great. However, the effects in this film, this is where the film falters for me, is that, like I said earlier, I feel like we're taking a step back on special effects. And I think part of the problem is us as an audience, we're accepting it. We're accepting of this. Yeah, you have a look at the effects in, say, Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League, compared to this. They are far superior. They feel there's a more tangibility to them, whereas here you're looking at what looks like rubber. There's in the scenes where you do see these older Supermen, older Batman, this sort of a thing, there is a uncanny valley plastic look to them. They don't look real. They don't look real. Even Henry Cavill, the bits of Henry Cavill when you saw him in the Speed Force and all that sort of stuff, doesn't look real. When characters are jumping around, flying around in the fight scenes, again, it just doesn't look like it looks like I'm watching a cartoon, poorly made cartoon. That's really my one gripe with this movie more than anything else. Is it as good as what people are saying? No, it's certainly not. It's not the best superhero or the best DC film ever made. It's not. It's you know, it's a decent DC movie. It's not fantastic like what it's being made out to be. That being said, it is a nice sort of bookend to the entire sort of Zack Snyder-esque version, that universe. It gives it a nice sort of closure. And you know, the one scene at the end, the scene where Barry drops the F-bomb, I did laugh at that bit when, you know, he's talking to Bruce Wayne on the phone and the car pulls up, out steps Bruce Wayne, you only see the foot, he's surrounded by people, Barry stood there smiling, Ben Affleck coming up, no, people spread apart and it's George Clooney, and Barry turns around and says, who the F is this guy? I laughed at that bit. I thought that was fantastic. I thought that was very, very funny, very on point humour, because of the disgust that, you know, the George Clooney Batman people have for it. And not so much me. Are much far worse is the Val Kilmer one for me. But I laughed at that, and it was fantastic for George Clooney to just be Bruce Wayne again. It was. I loved it. It was a nice bookend. So for me, this is it's a decent film, but not without its issues. Not without its issues. But you know, it's a solid summer blockbuster. I just think it's such a shame about the special effects. I really do. But anyway, that's my review for The Flash. Now, if you've seen The Flash, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know your thoughts on it. What was your favourite cameo within this film? I know there was a couple more that I failed to mention and you know, stuff like that. But for the most part, I think I've covered it. You know, yeah, it was okay. It was okay. Tomatoes.